artist with Ursula George. Her CD, I'm Driving, has top charts and been heard on over 300 stations worldwide. We'll talk about her music and upcoming show at the legendary Chan's Jazz Club. I'm Anne-Marie Spotherikis, and you're in the studio. Lori, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Anne-Marie.
For anyone who doesn't know, Lori is not only a talented musician, but also the recipient of numerous awards, including a Lifetime Achievement Award for her role at the Wood-Pawcatuck Watershed Association, and is currently the director of the Petaquamsket Historical Society. I've been practicing.
Very good. You did both very well, actually.
The Petaquamsket Historical Society, which oversees multiple properties. So we'll talk about her music in the first half hour, and we'll spend the second half hour talking about what's happening with the Historical Society. So first, your music. Lori, when did you start playing, singing, and playing musical instruments?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 7 years old, and I got my first guitar, believe it or not, from I don't know if you remember, years ago, you could sell Christmas cards door to door out of a catalog and get prizes. And so I saw the acoustic guitar in the prize catalog and thought, oh, I have to have that. So I sold enough Christmas cards, and once I got that guitar, I started to take lessons, and that was at Luca Music in Providence, Rhode Island.
So you've been an overachiever since you were like 7 years old.
I guess so. I don't know if I'd say an overachiever, but just always, had my hand in many things.
I'm going to have to stop you right there.
Yeah.
You just said that you don't consider yourself an overachiever, and I believe, were you not the youngest recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award?
I was the youngest living recipient of the EPA Lifetime Achievement Award. They did give them posthumously to younger people, but I really won the Lifetime Achievement Award for doing my job at the Watershed Association. I guess I did it well. I had the visible projects I did, which were establishing fishing access areas throughout the watershed. I did hand in hand with my partner, Ray Sharensky, who passed, Ray Sharenzia. Sharensky is another friend of mine, but Ray Sharenzia, who is a name well known here in Westerly, and who was the chief engineer at Sharenzia and Associates, which his son Sergio now runs. Ray and I did many of those projects together. So as much as I was lauded for my performance there, Ray really shared in that.
Well, you have such a diverse background, from environmental protection and science to obviously the Historical Society, and then also as a musician. Have you been surprised at the sort of success and acclaim of this? Is your first CD?
No, this is my second CD, actually. The first one under the Ursula George name was called Blue Basics. I did that in 1999, and I did it as a duo with George Reithofer, a.k.a. Fisher-Price Slim. He played for some of our songs. He used a Fisher-Price amplifier around his neck. That was his gimmick. And that CD actually did really well. It's been downloaded, sold about 11,000 individual tracks, and that was played all over the world. And it took me 10 years to do the second CD. It actually took 4 years to do the making of the CD itself, because I had started it at one studio and I just couldn't get happy about it. I wasn't inspired there, and I, at some point, decided either I quit or I find another studio and engineer that could bring out the best of what I was doing. And I did that. I found Bobby Keys at BK Studios in Saugus, Mass. And then the magic started to happen. So
nice. So who have been some of your influences musically, throughout your life?
Well, if you want to go way back,
because we were talking before, I said, I hear a little Katie Lang and a little Wynonna Judd.
I wouldn't call those my, I like them both, but I wouldn't call them my influences. I was first exposed to blues music through rock and roll, through Eric Clapton and people like that. And then and Led Zeppelin. Those are all rock acts, British rock acts. What happened with the blues was the blues is a uniquely American art form. It goes back to, the Civil War, and it is a type of music that is representative of the hardship of certain peoples of a period of American history. And it never was a real huge success in the mainstream here in America, but the English people really resonated with them. So they brought the blues artists over to, and by blues artists I mean Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Lead Belly, people of that genre of blues. They brought them to play in coffee shops in England. And then the British revival was born out of that, because groups like Led Zeppelin, The Who, the Rolling Stones, Cream, Eric Clapton grabbed onto that music, and then they made it famous in America. And so it really wasn't until the 60s and 70s that blues was starting to come into the mainstream. So those are really my early influences in blues. And then I discovered Bonnie Raitt, who really opened the door for me to artists like Sippy Wallace and Blue Lou Barker, and the women of the 20s, 30s, and 40s who really pioneered the female side of the art form. So that's kind of how I got into playing the vaudeville music, that much of what my newest recording is about.
And I'd like us to actually take a listen to one of the tracks on the CD now. I'm Anne-Marie Spotherikis. Joining me today is Lori Urso. We're talking about her music with the group Ursula George and their upcoming performance at Chan's Jazz Club in Woonsocket this Saturday night, November 12th at 8 p.m. Tickets are on sale now. This is one of my favorite tracks from the CD. It's called Honest I Do. Let's take a listen, and thank you for joining us in the studio. That track was Honest I Do. Lori, that's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Really, that's probably my favorite song on the whole
that's
CD.
Nice.
I told Lori beforehand, I said, I've been driving around for 2 days just singing my brains out in the car, listening to the music. I just love it. How do you choose the music?
Honest I Do is a Jimmy Reed tune, and Jimmy Reed, speaking of my influences, is one of my biggest blues influences, and he was a huge artist for Chess Records in the 50s. He was the hit maker, and the Jimmy Reed sort of chugging rhythm, they called the rhythm that launched 1,000 hits. And if you listen to like the best of Jimmy Reed, you'd probably recognize a lot, but you might not think you do now. But So I wanted that. That's really the Chicago blues era. There was a great migration of blues artists who moved from during the Jim Crow era from Mississippi in the South up to the North, which was a less hostile territory for them. And the music changed. It went from a very acoustic in nature to electric in nature. And then you had Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Junior Wells, and the big stars of the Chicago period. But Jimmy Reed was one of them. And that song is interesting because really Jimmy Reed was a guitarist and harmonica player, and that little riff in there, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, is the essential Jimmy Reed riff, and you'll hear it it's like the only lead he knew how to play. There's a couple of riffs and you hear them in all of his songs. But what we did in that song, because on I'm Drivin', which is the name of this CD, Marty, my husband, and I played all the instruments. We're the only two people on it. So,
and tell people what your lead guitar, rhythm.
I play rhythm guitar, lead guitar, and slide guitar, and sing, and Marty plays drums and piano. And so where Jimmy Reed would have played harmonica there, I played slide guitar. And the guitar that I'm using there was actually my grandfather's guitar. It's a 1934 Dobro, and it was an engagement gift from my grandmother to my grandfather in 1934. She put it on layaway and paid $1 a week for 75 weeks to Axelrod Music in Providence.
Wow.
So being that I'm the only descendant of my grandfather who plays guitar, I inherited that guitar. So I needed to find a song where I could record with that, and so I picked Honest I Do.
It sounds like a perfect.
Yeah. And now, also would like to note that at the show on Saturday, Ursula George does not do many performances. It's a specialty act. You won't find it in bars all the time. This is only my second big show since the CD came out. I did my release at the Met in Pawtucket, and now we're at Chan's. And for both shows, I've been somehow blessed to have Sugar Ray Norcia in my band. I don't know how I do it, because you don't really get to play with Sugar Ray unless you're in the Blue Tones, which is his band. And that band, Sugar Ray and the Blue Tones, is very well known here in Westerly because Ray he grew up in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, as did Neil Gouvin, his drummer. And he lives now in Rhode Island. But I had first asked his pianist, Anthony Gerasi, if he would do the show in Pawtucket, and he agreed. And Anthony's just the most phenomenal pianist, and he understands this period of music, so what he does to it is spectacular. And then I was feeling brave, so I thought, well, let me ask Ray if he'll do it. He probably will never do it, but he agreed, and we had a great time that night, and we actually sing duet on Honest I Do. So Ray and Anthony will be in the band this Saturday as well. So you'll get not only the Ursula George thing, but Blue Tones fans would also get a treat by having Ray and Anthony perform.
And you mentioned that you play with your husband on this CD. What was that like, making the CD with your husband, Marty?
Well, Marty and I have known each other for 13 years now, and our association began through music. When I had WERI, yay, AM and FM, with my former husband, Mark Urso, we had a blues show on the station called Backstage with the Blues, and it was syndicated on about 5 stations at the time. And James Montgomery was the host of the show, the well-known harmonica player who also lives in Rhode Island. He's originally from Detroit. And James was trying to get his recording off the ground, and he needed somebody to help back and produce it. So Mark and I took on that role. And working with other people on the CD, they said, well, why don't we hire Marty Richards to play the drums? Because Marty has a long and very well-known history in jazz and blues. He's a Berkeley grad, and he's played with all of the greats. And so we hired Marty, and that's when we met. It was through that recording. And then as time went on and things change, people change, marriages end, Marty and I reconnected in 2002. And so our relationship's always been music. And he always sort of had this, when I put the first Ursula George album out, he actually said to me way back when, maybe someday you and I'll do an album, we'll call it Ursula Martin. And years later I said, well, we will do an album, but we'll call it Ursula George. So it was great working. He's unbelievable. And he has recorded over 100, more than 100 albums with different, many people. Joe Perry, Katie Curtis, Gary Burton, Duke Robler. I mean, he's Peter Wolf. He plays for the Jay Giles Band now, plays for the Joe Perry Project. I mean, he's very, very experienced. So what's nice about this record, it's the first recording of him on piano in his career. Yeah.
Wow. And even given, his track record, the name of the CD is I'm Driving. So I'm guessing that you were still the boss.
Well, no, actually, it's an ironic name. It's a sort of an inside joke between Marty and myself. He's the official driver in the family. He does all the driving, and I sit in the passenger seat. And even if we're buying cars, he's the official test driver. I never test drive a car. He does it, and he reports. So the I'm Driving and putting me on the cover in the driver's seat was sort of the irony of the whole thing. But it is the music that I picked. It's the music that I play. So it really is. But we co-produced it, Marty and I, yeah.
Yeah. Do you come from a musical family?
No.
So really? So it's sort of an
I come from
unexplained
two parents that have no talent in music whatsoever, believe
You're
it or
just
not.
The woman with the golden touch.
I guess my
touches.
grandfather played guitar. Actually, my grandmother played guitar before my grandfather, and they were sort of amateurish. But I always just connected with music from early on. It inspired me as a young person. I have an uncanny ability to remember lyrics. I know the lyrics to all songs that come on. Marty's always saying, you need to go on that show, whatever it's called. Do you know the lyrics?
Yeah,
I don't know what the name of it is, but so I just always, that was always the art that worked for me. So.
We're listening to your music. We're talking about your music. I want to let people know how they can buy it.
Okay. You can buy it online at, if you go to www.ursulageorge.com, that's URSULAGEORGE.com, that will lead you right to the purchasing portal, and you can either buy hard copy or download MP3s if you're sophisticated. And we'll sell it at the show this weekend. Okay. I'll sell it when I do shows, but it's mostly now online.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Let's see. We're about to go to break. So we're in the studio with Lori Urso, lead singer with Ursula George. They'll be performing, as she mentioned, this Saturday night at Chan's Jazz Club in Woonsocket. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, you can go to ursulageorge.com or click the like button on the Ursula George Facebook page. Here's Little Honey from the CD I'm Driving. We'll be right back with more from Lori Urso. I'm Anne-Marie Spotherikis, and you're listening to In the Studio.
Little honey, are you going out tonight? Little honey, I ain't looking for a fight. Little honey, you know I won't get mad if you tell me about the girlfriend that you had who lied last night. Please come over here. Little honey, we've got to get something clear. Little honey, if you don't answer me soon, you'll be coming home tomorrow to an empty room. The lights let down and the door open ya.